Hello again. I'm back with another clock to repair, and this one is a Sessions. I found it at a local thrift store, and I've done a few Sessions in the past. I'm not a big fan of them. They have an unusual gear system in the mechanism, makes it kind of difficult to work on at times. But I like the design of this because rather than it being in a clock case, it's sort of almost like a picture frame and it's mirrored, which I thought looked kind of interesting, a bit of an elegant look to it. You can see if I turn it around, that's how it's put together on the back. The only thing I've done to it so far is I have plugged it in, and I do know that it doesn't run. I'm not sure how old it is, but I would hazard a guess that it's probably from the 1960s. And let me get it set up on my work table and start to take it apart and see why it's not running. Okay, again, I really like how this one looks. It's a nice solid piece of mirror. It has these brass elbows holding in what looks like either plastic or lucite, kind of like scrolls. And I think this can clean up and look quite good. But the first step is I want to test that the wiring is intact. And I'll use my ohm meter for that. Let me just turn it on. And when I touch the lead to the plugs, if numbers flash here, then I know that the circuit's intact. Okay, nothing's happening. It's working. So that could mean that there's an issue with the actual motor, or a wire is broken in it. Again, won't know until I take it apart. Put this aside. First thing I have to do is undo these two screws. Let me do that. To save some time, I've already loosened the screws. There's one. And the other. Lift off the plate. This comes off. This should come off. Okay. Oh, and this comes off. Little brass ring here. Very decorative. Now, in other Session clocks that I've seen, these motors should be able to pop off from this plate that it's attached to. And if I can do that, I might be able to, because I do have parts from some Sessions clocks that I've been unable to repair, I might be able to come up with a motor that does work and can just replace this one. So let's work on taking this apart first. I'm going to look to remove the glass to the rim of the hands. And to do that, there's some metal tabs bent around the rim here. So let me undo that. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Not bad. Now, what's different with this clock I'm seeing is this wire, instead of being soldered to a connection, there's little clips. So I think I can just pull this off. There's one. Okay, good. Let me put this whole frame aside so I don't damage anything. Okay, the next step will be remove the hands. That was easy. That's a little tighter. Well, there we go. And let's try the last one. Oh, wow. Compared to some of the older clocks I've tried to take hands from, that was quite easy. Now for the dial, I see a metal tab bent over the edge here. Bend that up. Okay. Now to remove this, I see two nuts holding this plate, and once I remove it, I'm going to expose the gears that are under here. So let's do that next. And I want to lift this gently. I don't try not to disturb them so I don't get confused where they're supposed to be positioned. There we go. So what I'm going to do next, which is what I always do, I'll take a few photos of this arrangement, make sure I know exactly how these gears are positioned, and then I'll proceed from there. So let me work on that, and then I'll continue. Okay, I know what I'm doing. The first thing I did though was I gathered up all the parts so nothing gets lost. And this is really a very simple design, very few gears. Turning it over, this is the set knob. I have to remove that. And there are two gears here on top, fell over, but this comes out, one. Another one underneath that, and then this part. Then the set stem comes out. There's a spring here. Don't want to lose that. And what I have to do next is figure out how to remove the motor from this plate. It looks different from other session clocks that I've worked on. Those have these little posts coming out of the back of the motor that sort of snap into the plate, and I'm not seeing that here. I'm going to look around. I should be able to show you what they look like, what I expected to see here. So let me see what I can find. I found an example of the motor that I was expecting to see. If you look at the back of it, you can kind of see these little posts sticking out from it, and they position into the plate. It's a different kind of plate than this one. Looks like this. And here are the holes that the posts fit into. Sort of like it'll go in like that, and then you rotate the motor and it locks in, it snaps into it. But I cannot do that with this one. So I think the only way that I'm going to get this clock up and running, maybe I have to find another sessions clock, but it has to be this size plate. They're not all universal, but if I can come up with one that's the same size, I might be able to use, and assuming it works so that I can get it to work, I might be able to swap it out completely into the mirrored frame that I'm hoping to get working. I don't know yet where I'm going to find another clock, but if I do, I will come back and continue. Well, it's taken quite a while, but I think I finally found the right size sessions clock. I found this one on eBay. It was going for $11, which is pretty inexpensive considering this was advertised as a working clock. I reached out to the seller to get some measurements of it, and it sounded like it might work. And just to show you, the plate on the original clock, where the dial would sit here, this is pretty much the exact size that I'm looking for. And if I turn it over and put the back plate over it, that's sitting pretty much exactly where you want it to go. So maybe I got lucky here. Let me open this up. I'll remove the screws, get the clock out of here, and then we'll know for sure. And again, to save some time, I'm going to get the screws out first. Okay, they're out. Let me try to slide the clock out of the case. Okay. Now this setup looks more like the kind of sessions clocks that I'm used to seeing. Looks like the kind of a motor that would pop out of this plate if I needed to. But while I have it open, let's plug it in and see if it actually does run. And there it goes. So we got a working motor here. Very good. Next thing I want to do is remove the glass, the rim, the hands, and get the whole mechanism out of here. To do that, this rim is held on, it's just sort of bent over the edge of the frame here. Okay. Oh, something's holding it up. Over here. Okay. See if I can get the glass out of here. Not that I need to, I don't plan on using it, but okay, what I'm going to do next, I'll remove the hands. Here's 1, 2. That wasn't bad. The dial. Okay. Now this one, as compared to this plate, which only had 2 nuts holding onto it, here we have 3. So I have to undo these 3, which will get the whole mechanism out from here. It'll also expose the gears, and I'll get to see just how clean they all are. So let me get started on that. And I should also mention, while I have it open, this plate here really is pretty much the same size as this one. And when this dial goes on here, I think that's going to work out just fine. Anyway, back to undoing the 3 nuts on here. One, 2, that come off, yep, 3. Okay, lifting this plate should expose the gears here. Okay. And although I've done it before, I'm going to take a few photos so I know exactly how these are positioned. And already I'm seeing a great deal of dirt in here. Don't know if I can show you or not. But this definitely needs a good cleaning in here. So let me work on taking some photos so I know exactly how this is going to come apart. And then I'll continue. Before I remove this, however, I want to take off the power cord. It's kind of getting in the way. Okay, there we go. Now I've loosened the nuts on here. These top 2 gears come off. 1 and 2. Okay. And this is, for me, a very unusual design. It's what I refer to as sort of a screw gear. When the motor spins, it runs up against this little gear here. Hard to show. But anyway, this one comes off. And my plan now, give all these parts a real good cleaning. This does not come off very easily. I'll just clean around this as best I can. And here again, you can see those little pins, how they lock in to these holes here. So let me get to work cleaning this up, and then I'll be able to continue. Everything is cleaned, and I've lubricated it. And I do that using, they're called oil pins with a synthetic clock oil. And what you want to do is just a very little bit, just around the pivots on the end of the gears here. I drop here, right around here, never the teeth, but the pivots and also the holes in the plates where they're going to fit into. Next, let's see if I can reassemble this. That goes there. Whoop. And then, actually it's this one first. Okay, now I'm going to secure the plate with the 3 nuts. Let me do that, then I'll continue. Everything's back together. When I spin the motor here, the gears are all turning properly. The next step would be to place the motor back onto the plate, but before I do that, I have to make sure that these screw posts on the front plate are going to fit into the back plate. So to verify that, first I have to remove, this is the set knob, and that comes out like that. This would have to line up and it just about fits. Okay, the only concern I have is the positioning of the set knob, which is going to be here. This is actually for a power cord. This is where the set knob went through the original older clock, or the mirrored clock, which means I have to drill a hole in this plate to accommodate this. And the most likely position, I'll flip this around. So if it's going to sit like this, this has to have a hole right around here. So it'll take me some time to precisely figure out where I want to drill a hole here. And once I have that worked out, I'll continue. I came up with a way to mark exactly where I have to drill the hole in the plate, and I'll try to show. What I did first was I got a couple of long toothpicks, taped them together, and seated them where the set knob stem goes. Now at the top of it, I put a little dab of nail polish. Then I positioned the plate over it, lining up where the screws meet these holes, and when I seated it far enough down, the nail polish was transferred to the other side of this plate. So now I have the spot where I have to drill. And let me get to work on that. I've drilled the hole through the plate right here. And then I placed the set knob stem back into position. Let me just zoom in a little. And now when I position the plate over it, we have it going down like this. So I think that's going to work out quite well. What I want to do next is seat the motor back onto the plate. And next, I have to secure it with the 3 nuts. Let me get those out. Now, it'll take me a few minutes to do all 3, or at least a minute or 2. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this on my own. And once they're all back on, I'll continue. Okay, back on. Next, I'm going to seat the dial. And then the hands. Start with the hour hand first. And the minute hand. And the second hand. Okay. Now before I do anything else to this, what I'm going to work on is the frame / case. I'm going to look to remove all of this, clean and polish this as best I can, and then we'll start reassembling everything. So let me get to work on that. I can also mention, in case you noticed, the hands that I put back on here were the ones that came with this clock face. These are the original hands that came with this one, but the motors are slightly different in the size of the stems, and these were loose on here, so I had to go with the hands that came with this motor. For this now, I just have to undo these 4 nuts here. There's 1. And a washer. I'm going to go ahead and do the other 3, and then I'll continue. Okay, they're off. Let's pick up the frame, see what we have here. Whoop. Okay, I'm sure the mirror is going to clean up real nice. Just some window cleaner, Glass Plus, Windex, that kind of thing. I'll use some Nox-On to polish the brass. And I thought these were plastic, but these are glass. So that makes it a lot easier to clean. All right, let me work on that. Once everything is cleaned and polished, I'll look to reassemble it. I've cleaned and polished the brass, the glass rods, the mirror, the glass over the clock face, the brass rims. What I have to do next is position the clock back into here. The glass goes over the dial. This rim sits over it. I just have to bend the tabs over here to secure it. I'll do that on my own. I'm also going to remove all of this because there's going to be so much handling to put the clock in here. I'll get fingerprints over everything. It'll be a lot easier to clean it up once the clock's back in it. So let me secure this next. The rim is back on. Now, before I secure this back into the mirror, what I have to do next is reattach the power cord. That'll take a few minutes, so let me work on that. And you can see already how many fingerprints I'm getting all over this. The power cord is attached. I wasn't able to attach any of the wire nuts tight enough for me to be confident that they might not come off. So I ended up soldering the wire and then sealing it up with some heat shrink tubing. That's not going anywhere now. Next, I have to slide this housing back into position. And that is followed by the plate. And now I just have to line up the screws in these holes here and secure it with the nuts. And then I'll be ready to reapply this frame onto the mirror. Everything is back together, and I just want to mention that I reached out to some clock people that I know to try to get a more accurate estimate of how old the clock is. And what I was told is that this mirrored clock is from the 1950s, whereas the clock that I used to replace the motor that came out of this wood case, this one is from the 1940s. So all told, we're looking at a clock that's probably in the neighborhood of about 75 years old. Let me set this up on my work table, we'll plug it in, and we'll give it a test run. I have it set up and plugged in. Let me turn it on. And it's running. So there you have it. It's a Sessions, what I would refer to as a decorative clock, for lack of a better term. And I'm very pleased with how this one came out. I like the looks of this a lot. I hope you enjoyed the video. All of your questions and comments have been greatly appreciated. And that pretty much wraps things up. Bye for now.